I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. Today I want to talk to you about the city you like to call Hong Kong. It's been all over the news recently, and a lot of people are confused as to why. What's up, Nathan Road? Hong Kong! It's a silly name, actually, because that's not even the real name of the city. If you had to come up with an English name for the city today, you would probably choose either Hanggang, based on the local branch of Chinese, or Xianggang, based on the common language of Chinese people, Mandarin. That's right, just like how Chinese food in America is a weird bastardized version of Cantonese food from 200 years ago, Hong Kong is an English bastardization of the city's real name. But it really doesn't matter what we foreigners call Xianggang in English, because, and this is important here, Hong Kong is not part of the United States. It's not part of the United Kingdom, and this may be surprising to you, but it's also not part of Australia. It's part of China, and it always has been. Except, of course, for when Western colonial powers, specifically Britain, came to China to sell drugs to the local population and enforce a vast, highly illegal drug empire with warships and soldiers. They stole the entire Hong Kong area from China. At its peak, Britain was selling enough illegal narcotics every year in China to kill every single man, woman, and child on Earth twice over. When people talk about Western riches gained through slavery, I wonder why no one gives a damn about the Chinese. Well, I do. I give a damn. Eventually, Hong Kong came back to the motherland, and other than that period, no one has ever had valid claim to Hong Kong. In fact, that probably wasn't valid either. Because the British oppressed rebellions, had their way with the locals, and enacted a white supremacist apartheid, eventually people in Hong Kong gained a new identity, somewhere between Chinese and British. To this day, they drive on the wrong side of the street and have those goofy double-decker buses. But on the other hand, the people I've met in Hong Kong are generally super cool, and of course, it's a great international hub. Nothing I say in this video is meant to disparage Hong Kongers. On the contrary, to me, they are exactly as awesome as other Chinese people. But no matter how the people feel, and no matter how many levels their buses have, make no mistake, they are Chinese. When the British cartel finally returned Hong Kong to the mainland's control, it was granted a high level of autonomy. But the government didn't develop extensive extradition laws. No one seemed to notice this fact until a Hong Kong guy killed his pregnant woman in Taiwan and then just went back home to Hong Kong safe and sound. He even told the Hong Kong authorities he was guilty. You see, without extradition between the two, Hong Kong had no way to legally send the guy to Taiwan. Get it? There needs to be a way to deal with this loophole. So anyway, now there's a bill being pushed through to allow extradition from Hong Kong. The bill is applicable to Hong Kong and any place outside Hong Kong. Any place outside Hong Kong is immediately interpreted as mainland China in some people's minds. Foreign powers suddenly started butting in with their opinions and what they think China should do with its city because, you know, colonialism. To get Hong Kong back from the British after their time of being drug-dealing warlords was over, China signed an agreement which basically promised not to interfere too much with their government. Why China would care about this agreement is beyond me, but I guess they had to do whatever it took to formally get their property back. Kind of like promising a retired Pablo Escobar that you'll keep your car waxed if he'll just please give it back to you. So now the bill's going through and there's a lot of protesters around. It's pretty hard to get a real gauge on the percent of people who support something, but we can estimate with polling. A petition in Hong Kong got 700,000 signatures for the bill to pass, which is pretty significant. You see, allowing people to murder pregnant women in Taiwan and not get punished for it in Hong Kong isn't a very popular idea in every circle for some reason. But the protests were pretty big too. Some say up to 1 million people. Damn! So the protesters are complaining that the bill will allow mainland China to extradite critics of China. But let's take a look at what happens when the bill is examined by someone who actually understands legal stuff. Albert Chen Hun-yi, a legal scholar from the University of Hong Kong and Basic Law Committee member who previously cast doubt over the amendment, said the government's latest proposal is acceptable. Speaking on a radio program, he said there are clauses in the amendment bill to guard against political persecution and believes the central government would not easily request renditions. Even if it's a politically sensitive case raised by the mainland, the Hong Kong courts will review it if it involves political persecution, he said. I believe Beijing would not make an application lightly, as it does not want a Hong Kong court to potentially rule that the mainland wants to politically persecute people. Okay, so a Hong Kong legal genius guy who was against the bill actually read it, and now he's accepting of it. So why are all these people protesting again? The PRC says this idea that the bill is to extradite critics stems mostly from foreigners misrepresenting it. Of course, the way that's reported is that the PRC blames the West for the protests. Not exactly. They're saying that the protesters don't even understand the bill because foreigners have clouded the issue. Well, is that true? International critics have said, quote, "We believe the proposed legislation would irreparably damage Hong Kong's cherished autonomy and protections for human rights by allowing the Chinese government to request extradition of business persons, journalists, rights activists, and political activists residing in Hong Kong." Apparently, there was a performance by the village people as well. So activists in the West get the ear of the media, which publish these kinds of stories, which makes the public panic, which the media can then report on. It's like a cycle in which no one wins but the inflammatory media and the activists. So international critics have apparently muddied the water by confusing everyone about what the bill actually does. Okay, but maybe the guy who killed his girlfriend in Taiwan, I don't know, maybe it was an accident. Can we just pretend it didn't happen somehow? Forget the whole thing and just hope no one ever does this again? No, it was no accident. The guy had this adorable girlfriend in Hong Kong. He took her to Taiwan, suffocated her, then stuffed her body into her own suitcase. Then he wheeled her out of the hotel, discarded her body, and caught a flight back to Hong Kong. Do you want him to go free? Yes or no? Now, just look at this reporting comment from back when the murder story broke. Taiwanese authorities have requested he be extradited back to Taipei to face charges, but the case is proving to be a legal puzzle, as no extradition agreement currently exists. A special provincial law may need to be created for the purposes of this case. And that's exactly what's happening. Hong Kong is enacting a law to stop people like this from literally getting away with murder. If that's something we can't all agree on, then I don't know where to begin. I appreciate Hong Kong's political situation and their right to protest. What I hope happens is the bill passes, people get extradited for the most serious of crimes, and everyone goes back to being peaceful and content. But whatever happens with this bill and with Hong Kong, I just want to say, people, please don't do anything physically damaging to your loved ones. If you're getting dark thoughts, seek help before you do something you will regret. This is way, way too far, and my heart goes out to her family. Let's read laws with a level head, and for God's sakes, let's prevent psychopaths from getting away with murder. Thanks, everybody. 谢谢.
大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. As many of you have no doubt discovered, my last video about Hong Kong was attacked by thumbs down bots, or protesters. They want me to stop talking about the protests in Hong Kong, and I surrender. I won't talk about the protests in Hong Kong any longer. Today, I want to talk to you about the riots in Hong Kong. As comments have flooded in about the situation in Hong Kong, I've noticed the usual trend. My supporters are for the most part rational. They're for the most part logical and smart. They have compassion, but are not weak and vulnerable to emotional manipulation. There are always exceptions and exceptional circumstances, but that's just a fact. Those people on my team have been overall patient and positive. Then, as usual, there's the other side of the discussion. When I made a video pointing out anti-China signaling coming from a racist English teacher, his followers came to defend him, which of course they did by making racist comments. When we talked about Huawei, our misguided friends came to comment again. They posted countless articles exposing America's spying and their own willingness to believe in unsourced rumors. The irony is so intense from where I sit, it stings my eye. But more recently, I made a video about Hong Kong, and the bots were in full effect. Let's take a look at some of these robots. This one has given itself a name, Chris L. Chris was programmed to resist any video that even questions the situation. You know, so many people I meet think I have a team behind me, when I actually don't. I really want one though, because then I could have more time to answer comments like these. So for now, let's just go through this one. It's another typical comment from haters. A bunch of explaining to me why I'm wrong by making a bunch of wrong statements. Lots of wrong information in this video, he says. Okay, let's hear it. Show me how wrong I am about the poor old British. Explain to me why the Chinese were at fault. Opium is viewed as a drug today, but it wasn't during the Opium War. Wrong. It was viewed as a drug. That's why the emperor ordered the destruction of the illegal substance. That led to the First Opium War. It was banned several times, and rather famously, trafficking opium to China carried a death sentence. Quote, any foreigner or foreigners bringing opium to the central land with design to sell the same, the principal shall most assuredly be decapitated. You literally couldn't be more wrong about this point that you are using to try to say someone else is wrong with. British still had not banned opium in their own country by then. Well, yeah, that would be relevant if they were selling opium in Britain, but they weren't, so it isn't. They were selling it in China, where it carried a death sentence. In the Chinese literature, opium was recorded as a medicine as early as the Ming Dynasty, the one before Qing Dynasty. Right, because before the British ramped up their extensive, vast, illegal drug cartel, very few people in China had used it. There was no major recreational opium market before the West brought it. It was actually used recreationally by higher class people during Qing. Yeah, and farmers, and workers, and the middle class. Everyone across every demographic used opium because, like I said, British and Americans brought in enough opium in a single year to kill every human on Earth twice over. So opium was not much different than other commodities. Well, this one is right, actually. I mean, other commodities were sold legally, and opium was sold illegally. And others were taxed properly, opium wasn't. And other commodities had the blessing of the empire, while opium was expressly forbidden. Others were practical and useful, while opium was deadly. Others led to prosperity, opium led to war. But other than that, yeah, opium was similar. I mean, it was a physical thing, so I guess that's a similarity. And of course I get comments calling me pro-China, and I get comments calling me anti-China. But another one the protesters try to put out there is that I don't understand Hong Kong. Alright, you want me to be more clear? Fine. Here's what's really happening in China today. China is several entities all put together. The mainland, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Amen, Macau, Hainan, etc. Several landmasses and regions. Through events in history, there are several governing bodies of different strengths and legitimacies. There are a lot of moving parts, but we're talking about Hong Kong. Hong Kongers were abducted from their country and indoctrinated with a different culture, that of their oppressors. Disillusioned by the broken promise that British rule would be forever, Hong Kongers feel abandoned by their former masters. They've been given back to China, which promised to make the reacquisition as slow and drama-free as possible, with a soft target of 2047. Cognitive dissonance among some of the general populace has led them to believe that they will remain a special region forever, contrary to all evidence. They pray and dream that a white knight will come and rescue them from being Chinese. Self-loathing is a strange form of racism. Some protest at any hint of closer relations with the motherland, as we see here with this bill intended to punish murderers, child molesters, and heinous criminals. They pretend it's about the bill itself, but it isn't. It's about not wanting to associate with their own country. It's quite easy to prove. One thing to notice, though, is how many people try to post this same talking point. Oh, Nathan, you handsome devil. You just don't understand, man. Taiwan said it wouldn't even ask for the murderer back. And for some reason, people think that that's evidence against the mainland. Sorry, but that's evidence against Taiwan. If Taiwan wants to allow a man who brutally murdered his girlfriend to go free, that's saying something bad about them. I loved Taiwan when I was there last, but is murder going to be legal there soon or what? Hell, even Hong Kong, the fugitive paradise, is trying to punish this guy. They got him on a technicality and are trying to hold him as long as they can. Does Taiwan believe in laws against murder or not? Do people even think about these comments? Anyway, let's take a closer look at this bill, since people seem pretty confused by all the vague propaganda out there. While the West reports it simply as a bill that allows for extradition to China, that doesn't seem to have much to do with the reality. Though the specific bill is quite irrelevant, let's touch on it. So the leader of Hong Kong wanted to introduce a bill to allow for extradition to any regions not currently covered. Hong Kong only has agreements with 20 countries, a small fraction of the world. People freaked out mostly because the entire world does include mainland China. China, you know, the country that Hong Kong is in? Currently, hundreds of high-profile fugitives from mainland are in Hong Kong. People commit crimes, even crimes that are illegal in both Hong Kong and the mainland, and then they just go to Hong Kong and pretend it never happened. I mean, just look at this. China fugitive escapes again as Hong Kong mulls over extradition law. Yes, criminals who have never been punished go to Hong Kong where they can be free to live their lives without consequences, leaving victims without justice. What kind of crimes are fugitives able to avoid punishment for by going to Hong Kong? Murder, child molestation, and rape. Look at this guy, fugitive property tycoon to challenge Hong Kong's extradition plans. So we know that powerful local criminals are contributing to the protests, and some of the protesters are wanted rapists, murderers, and basically anything else you can think of. Totally free. Okay, so we know why some people are against the bill, because they're wanted by international authorities. And we know how many more people are opposed to the bill because they hate themselves for being Chinese and hate their motherland. But that's certainly not everyone, so what are some other reasons? Take a look at this New York Times article. You know, the same New York Times I busted lying intentionally, mistranslating and misleading their followers in a video attacking mainland China? Notice the only thing they have ever supported about China is separatism. Spend some time researching and you'll find nearly every American media outlet hates on China 24/7 in every way and supports nothing it does. The only exception is when some people voice separatist views. Suddenly, the media is all for it. They want China to fail. They want China to splinter and break and die, but it's just not happening. Look at this quote. If the bill passes, we would not be able to say what we want to say. We would be like meat on a chopping board at the mercy of the government, by some guy 25 years old. Oh my God! That sounds so true! Oh, well then, it's an open and shut case. If the bill gets passed, then no one can say anything against mainland China or they will literally be killed because some 25-year-old said that. My God, I was totally wrong. Block that bill. Wait, what does this say? What does it say when we ignore loud, inflammatory 25-year-olds blinded by passion and good intentions? Quote, a person could only be surrendered for crimes punishable in Hong Kong for more than 3 years imprisonment. Let me repeat that, because this single sentence that you practically never see mentioned in any Western anti-China media defeats nearly every argument from the protesters. I repeat, a person could only be surrendered for crimes punishable in Hong Kong for more than 3 years imprisonment. What that means is the 25-year-old random person on the street doesn't understand the bill, just like most of the people whining about it.
Might lead to silencing critics of Beijing.
If you live in Hong Kong, is it legal to talk trash about your brothers and sisters in mainland China? Yes, it is. There's no imprisonment. Is no imprisonment more than 3 years imprisonment? No? Then this bill doesn't apply to you. Get it? This is for crimes that are also crimes in Hong Kong. That means you would have to already be considered a criminal in Hong Kong if you committed the same act in Hong Kong. I mean, did anyone out there actually try to understand this thing? Of course not.
Once this law has been passed, it won't matter if you are an average person or a foreigner coming through Hong Kong. There will be a real possibility you'll be taken and sent off to the mainland.
No. It's if you do something that's illegal in mainland China, that's also illegal in Hong Kong, and the prison sentence for it in Hong Kong is more than 3 years. Then they can ask for you to be extradited. You get it? But you see, this entire bill is just a pawn in the overall move. In reality, no one cares about this bill. This bill doesn't do anything at all, really. It's not even an exciting bill, just a normal, boring, standard bill. That's not what Hong Kongers are really mad about. They're mad about coming back home. Let's pretend for a moment that this bill is totally fraudulent. It's exactly as some of the 25-year-old protesters claim. Just a policy to bring Hong Kong one step closer to being part of the mainland. It has nothing to do with crime. It's just a move in a bigger strategy game. Good. Good for you. Lucky for you to be brought back to the motherland peacefully. Because currently, you're seeing what happens when you try to thrive in a strange hybrid system. It's very tough to do. Your share of the GDP has been totally flat recently, even going down. That means you're getting poorer compared to the rest of the world. And you're totally dependent on the motherland already. Your national identity is in crisis, and large swaths of your population are in revolt over a bill they clearly don't understand. Your city is in irrational chaos. Meanwhile, on the other side of the water, Shenzhen is thriving. I watch footage of protesters throwing bricks, rocks, sticks, poles, and everything else they can at cops. And I watch reports whine about a few people getting pushed back by the police. I feel sad for everyone involved in these riots. There is no alternative future for Hong Kong but that of integration with China, and that's a wonderful, bright future. Embrace who you are and come home peacefully. You're Chinese, and that's amazing. Is that clear enough for you? Thanks, everybody. See you.
Try to storm the Legislative Council building this afternoon.
Here at the protests earlier in the day, but they're certainly making sure their voices are heard.
Making sure their voices are heard.